TV.
All right, the man that I'm now going to introduce is Marek Madej. He is like in the job for a long time already, made wonderful work for The Witcher, but also recently for Cyberpunk. Unfortunately, we can't talk about that, so it also doesn't work to ask a lot of questions about it because we're not able yet to respond to them. But like, please be patient. Please be patient. Marek will be back with some of his team, and then they will discuss the great arc of that recent game. But now I'm going to introduce you the one and only great Marek Madej.
TV.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hello, Marek. So nice that you're here. In a way, in a virtual way. Unfortunately, you're not able to join us here in the studio, of course, by the damn Corona. But we're so happy that you're part of this event tonight.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no, of course. We are following your work for quite some time. And of course, we really want to know everything about it. And also for all the people in the chat, please ask your questions for Marek. We're happy to answer them. I will try to watch. If you see me watching to my right side, it's not that I'm not interested or anything or watching something else. No, I'm checking the questions on the stream. So please ask them because, yeah, it would be great if you would be part of the chat. Okay, Marek, first question would be for me in this interview is like, how do you came up with concept art? When did it start?
For me, like as a job in general, or yeah, I don't think I ever actually planned to work specifically in concept art. It was just something that happened like organically. I think I always liked to draw because that was like when I was a kid, that was like something that I could use as a like part of like a play. Like one of my first memories with like drawings is like watching the trailer for Jurassic Park, and then immediately I wanted to like recreate the scene, but I didn't have like dinosaur toys, so I just like took like sheets of paper and just drew a bunch of dinosaurs, and I played with that. Like sounds weird, but yeah, like I get my toys with like dinosaurs later, obviously. And then like there was like a bunch of different things along the way in my life that actually led me to working in concept art. At first I thought that I'm gonna be like more around like illustrator or like some web designer, something like that, because I didn't even had that much knowledge about the concept art industry. At least like when I was in high school, it was basically almost non-existent in Poland. And in general in the world, like there was like very limited amount of positions. But along the way, the game industry like grew. It became like more popular. Like I was fortunate enough to also start in time when it was like relatively not that hard to actually get into the game industry and into concept art, because like there were not that many people like actually like knowing about it or like interested in it. Like maybe most of the people actually thought that it's not a valuable like work career path. Yeah, but I had like a bunch of different career ways along the way. I was working in the advertisement. I worked on some like short movies, some feature films. But at the end of the day, I ended up in concept art, and I'm very happy with that, because like it's an awesome job that I like. Sometimes obviously might be hard, but like for most of the time I enjoy it a lot.
All right. Hey, and when did you experience that you became like really good in it? What was like for you the changing point that you thought, well, okay, now I'm like skilled enough in that sense to make this big step into the industry?
I don't think I ever actually had something like that. Obviously, at the beginning, you have like those worries that, okay, am I good enough? But uh, at some point, it's just worth to try. And I like, because like you're probably never gonna feel like you're ready for something. It's like at the beginning, like, you know, you might get lots of rejection. I before I actually got my first jobs, I was sending lots of emails. Sometimes I was getting like some small freelance jobs, and you know, but at the end of the day, you need to like try and try more, and then at some point, and at the same time, also working on your skill, because in general, the thing is like there is job for almost every skill level, I would say. But the difference is that like the amount of jobs for like low skill, it's relatively also like there is not that many jobs for that, and they are like not paying very well. So like uh, as everybody is actually getting like better skills, and they're like getting more experience, it's also like easier to get a job and then find those like find those works. But I don't think that I ever had any like particular moment where I thought, oh yeah, that's it. It just, I was just trying to get the job, and I at some point I just got it. And
Hey, and in the work that we're now showing, this is like some earlier work, like around
yeah,
10 years or something like that ago. I see different styles. So I see gladiators. I see like
yeah.
little Roman kind of setups of a Roman city and training in light. And this is total different kind of artwork, like more the dynamic and coloring, etc. How do you train yourself? How do you gain those skills? Do you
You know,
do
like
a lot of tutorials or painting, or what are you focusing on?
especially at that time, I was, you know, like I was exploring a lot because like you don't like, I didn't have much experience, and I like at that time I didn't work with many artists, because like I would say that the best way of actually learning is like along the way with like working on some projects with other artists. That's like the you're gonna learn and grow the fastest, in my opinion, at least. At that time, I had like I was fortunate enough to have like a pretty cool group of friends that were already also working in the industry, because that those images are like from my beginnings, where, to be honest, I didn't really knew what the concept art is about. I was just like, you know, looking on the internet on some like online forums, and I saw lots of speed paintings and stuff like that, and I was just trying to basically emulate what a lot of people were doing. A lot of people were inspired by Craig Mullins. So what you can see in some of those like pictures, they like have lots of textures. But also I was inspired by other artists, like Alberto Mielgo, for example. And then obviously, like you can see in his work, some exploration and then some growth. But like I was taking something from Mullins, which were like those textured surfaces, and then applying maybe like some more defined like silhouettes to my pieces. Later on, I actually ended up doing like less of these textures, and like maybe go more into this like simple silhouettes and flat colors kind of style, which, you know, like along the way you were exploring more and more. At that time I was mainly doing some like, you know, studies and exploration for myself. Most of that stuff is like personal work, because at that time I was actually working on a project that was like cancelled and never like showed, like never was never finished. So basically, all of that work that I did at that time uh, never gonna be published. So
All right. Hey, and what do you like the most? Because I see landscapes and I see also a lot of character designs. Is there like a love for character designs or for landscapes? Is there, or do you like both as much?
uh, I like, I'm one of those people that actually I like to work in different styles and on different subject matters. maybe I'm leaning more towards characters and like creature design. I definitely had that moment when I was like making mostly environments. That was also coming from like one of my first actually game project that I was working on, and I was like doing mainly environments on that project. When I actually started working at CD Projekt, I was also mostly making concepts for environments, but after some time, I got an opportunity to work on the creature design, and then I think like I ended up that like rest of the team liked it enough to give me more and more work like that. So I ended up actually doing lots of creature and character designs for The Witcher 3, and later on in the last project. I was in a team of character art, but I also worked on some illustrations for Gwent. So you can see that like I'm still kind of versatile, which is a good and maybe a bad thing, because like it's a good thing when you actually like working on different stuff. I like to work on different stuff because like I got bored easily. But on the other hand, like when you're working on a bunch of different topics, it's hard to keep up with the quality that's you're gonna maybe see on ArtStation, for example. But obviously, concept art is not only about the quality of the picture, but also about the thought process and ideas. So.
Hey, and what makes like for you like a good design? Like for instance, now we watch one of the designs of The Witcher, but like also
Yeah.
I'm mentioning, I'm trying to refer to the landscapes. What is like making a good landscape? What do you think is like when you're making it, Marek Madej, and they are asking for like an apocalypse or like what you're now showing, this nice scenic of a how do you call, I don't know, a valley. Sorry, I couldn't get the word valley. But what are you looking for to make it special, or what is like important for you that it will be appealing in your drawing?
The thing is, like, I like with my my old work with like environments, like sketch like this one. I don't really think that it's like good, because they are maybe like the composition is not that interesting, and there is maybe not enough story, at least in my opinion. Like that's the thing. It also depends on the project, right? Like with environments, like sometimes if the environment work is the design is for the game, then it depends what's like necessary from this design, because it might be about the gameplay mechanics that you are showing in that concept art. It might be, if the piece is about the mood and the story, then it's about like creating nice composition that actually showing that story that you want to tell with the story. And then when it comes to that, it's like about the composition, the contrast, building the focal point in proper spots, and also like showing the audience elements that they could, be lost into, like, that the picture in general is not super obvious, but that it has like, except of like this main focal point, it has like a lot of other stuff that they can actually find maybe after watching it for a couple of seconds, not only for a second, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that there might be like a bunch of other things that like they're depending on particular projects. So it all depends.
Hey, there's a question on the chat, and I like it. So, what's the best advice you ever had on this from an expert? So, you're also listening probably, and you're working in a huge, talented team at CD Projekt Red. So, I think you also give each other feedback. But what was the advice that you can remember that was for you like really insightful for your career?
I don't know, because like I remember bad advices that I realized that they were not good.
Okay, what's the baddest advice you ever had?
Like for example, I had like advice that okay, you are good enough on environment, work on your characters now, and that was like when somebody's telling you that like you are good at something, then you naturally like you might believe in it, and then like and not even realize that, because the problem, especially at the beginning, is that you might not notice what's wrong with your pictures, right? Like, because like for me, with like the experience, it's not like I still make bad pictures sometimes, but the experience, what gives me is that like I can sometimes look at my image after a while with like a fresh perspective and analyze it, and then pinpoint what I actually don't like or what's not working in my picture. Like, so kind of like are directing it. Like this, like probably like the best advice that like you can, like I would like, it's not necessarily something that somebody like gave me, but like something that I realized from all of the conversation with people. It's like something that I mentioned before, like work with other like artists as soon as you can, and it doesn't have to be in professional environments. If you can like find some friends or people online that like they are willing to work on something with you together, then it's gonna be like the best opportunity to actually to grow, because you're gonna probably expose yourself to like different perspective, different point of view, or like that person might be better at something else, you might be better at something else, and you might, both of you might share your skills with each other. So
yeah, I can remember that we, of course, had a cup of coffee before we do this interview, like a talk at first. And I really thought you said something really interesting about like teaching, like the importance of actually increase your skills. Actually, is also to go and teach somebody else your skills. Why do you think teaching is so important in that sense?
That was actually something that I had some thoughts about it, but like I actually fully realized that when one of my friends actually did his presentations on one of the events, and it was mainly about actually teaching. And I had a like opportunity to teach. Like my main motivation for that was mainly to work on my maybe presentation skills and something like that, but also teaching, it forces you to realize what you already know and analyze your knowledge, and then think about how to share it with somebody else. So no matter how much you actually know, you might be just starting out, but probably you already know more that just somebody that never did it. So if you have like opportunity to teach somebody as soon as you can, it's a great opportunity to actually to force yourself into the area that actually also helps you to learn a lot. Because like I was teaching for a couple of years at college here in Warsaw. I was also obviously teaching concept art, and it actually helped me a lot in terms of like learning myself, because sometimes when I was actually I had to organize the lessons, and then when there was a topic and then all of those lessons were like kind of like in general like topics regarding fundamentals, and when there was something that I was actually never putting that much attention, I was obviously trying to prepare for those lessons as well. So yeah, as I hope I showed it, like it's actually a great opportunity to learn yourself when you're actually teaching somebody else, and also when you actually work in the studio with other people. It's actually similarly working like in similar way when you're trying to like maybe share your feedback and thoughts with like your coworkers.
Hey, one project that I really would love to discuss is also The Witcher 3. You work like intensively on it, and it's a really highly reclaimed project game. And one of our interns, Luke, is like he know now that you were here part of it, and I was like looking through the work that you sent to us to share, and he was like, "What? Is he actually such a big fan?" I can imagine like working from out that kind of script and working from out that kind of briefing. What was your first ideas when you read it? What they were asking from you?
You asking about the story?
Yeah,
Because
you saw the first ideas, etc., and it should be like resulting in great concept art. So when you saw the first ideas and sketches, etc., what were your first thoughts that you were involved in this project?
like the main thing about video games in general is that obviously every studio has like different approach to it, but like in many cases, sometimes you don't know the full picture of the actual like story that's gonna happen in a game. It might be the case sometimes, but like sometimes it might like get changed along the way. So usually when you are working on something, like sometimes you work on like specific project, and it might end up in a game exactly like you worked on it, but sometimes like certain stuff are constantly changing, like certain things are like getting moved to different areas, because there is this thing in games where like when you're working on like video game, you can actually work on different aspects of it all the time, and then if it might be chaotic at times, but like obviously if you want to improve certain stuff, because like when you're planning the whole project, you never know how it's going to end up. It might sound or look good on paper, might sound good in your head, but you're never gonna know how it's gonna be executed. So like you work on stuff, and then there are like different steps. Sometimes you need to go back to like previous steps to change something, because that's actually what concept art is for. Like you have an idea, and then you want to share it with the rest of the studio, like see if they're gonna like it and what's their impression of it. And then you make this concept art, and then people are seeing it and they can judge if it's actually gonna fit to what they had in mind in terms of the story. So.
And were you happy when you saw your concept art translated into the game and make it come alive?
When you're working in the studio, actually you have like this. You are fortunate enough to actually see when how it's made, and then sometimes you actually can like give feedback, like that's something was like not looking like how I intended, especially when somebody is working on a 3D model from your concept. But in general, as a concept artist, you might like sometimes think that like you know how the game, but like actually in terms of like perspective of development, you might actually don't know how the game actually gonna look like, right? If the team is big and you're actually working on certain parts of the game, you might actually know something about those characters, but like you might not know the full picture. So like in that sense, it's actually pretty cool when you're actually working on the games that you enjoy playing, because then you can actually play the game and enjoy it. But it all depends. Like in smaller studios, probably it's like easier to like to know the game, because then you're probably helping with other aspects of the game. Yeah, so it all depends, obviously.
Yeah. Hey, and I see a question in the chat popping up, and I think that's a really nice bridge to the next subject I would love to discuss with you. It's does Marek stick purely to 2D? That's by Every Dog Lee on the chat. And can you tell us a little bit more about like 2D, 3D, and your work process? Because we received some clips from you, so that you can.
Yeah, we actually, that's something that I think it's like pretty good question, because in recent years, actually what's on the screen right now is one of my upcoming like webinars that I did for CG Cup. It's actually available for pre-sale now, and it's gonna be released at the beginning of next year. So if somebody is interested in like more like detailed description of my process, it's actually that's an option. Obviously, as it shows, I'm using 3D as well, and that's something that actually I transitioned more and more to use 3D with my recent project Cyberpunk, because it kind of forced me, at least, to use different tools in terms of like being like more efficient. So and also because at the beginning, you know, I was not actually considering like 3D that much because it felt too technical. And then okay, like I want to do just like pretty images. Not necessarily I was focusing on the tools, because I was also like, you know, like doing some photo bashing and stuff like that. So I'm not a purist in terms of like using tools. But and also like I was starting from like softwares like 3D Max and ZBrush, and then they are like not the easiest tools to actually learn. So I had at least a couple of tries with ZBrush. But when I actually managed to learn enough to enjoy the actual process, or at least understanding how 3D in ZBrush works, and it might be actually pretty creative, because like what's the advantage of actually using ZBrush or like 3D package, like ZBrush in particular for me, because when you're trying to design a character, you don't have to think about, for example, like light and volumes, which like when you're drawing and you're trying to explain those things with picture, you need to actually like think about how to paint them properly. And it's actually might be very limiting when you're actually trying to focus on this instead of like design. And then when I'm using 3D, I don't have to think about those things, because like I can actually focus on the pure design of the shape instead of like focusing on how to paint it. So in that sense, I'm not using only 3D, like depending from project to project. Sometimes I'm moving back and forth from like ZBrush and Photoshop. I'm starting with sketches, then I'm doing some work in ZBrush. Then I might render stuff, or like just put the screen in Photoshop and then just overpaint it. So I think especially now, it's like pretty important for concept artists to use as many tools as you can, especially with like very realistic projects, like and big projects that, you know, there's like lots of stuff that like needs to be done, and that they needs to be like realistic or semi-realistic, and then to do as good work as you can, sometimes it's good to also use tools that actually can speed up your process in general. And then ZBrush, and then some rendering packages, like I'm using Keyshot and Blender sometimes. They can actually improve the speed of the work process for me a lot. And it also like helps with actually explaining or like sharing the ideas with the rest of the team, because then that's something that's actually happened to me like quite often, where you design, for example, like some creatures where you design this creature from one or two angles, and then somebody needs to translate it into 3D, and then you made some like design decisions that they are like a bit fake. They wouldn't work in 3D space, but they look cool on picture. So then there is like the 3D artist has like some problems with translating it into 3D. So you need to go back and forth and do some overpaints of that like screenshot of the 3D artist. So actually, you know, when I started using ZBrush, it also like improved the speed of you know, creating the characters in general. So
Hey, and maybe a really stupid question, but like working on a project like Cyberpunk or like the Witcher, how many of these art pieces or concept art are you actually producing a day, or how long are you able to work on a piece?
you know, it all depends also from the task that you are getting. In general, like it's you know, like when it's it depends if like you are counting like pieces, like every single sketch, or like the design work, because like in general it's also all depends. Like at the beginning I was working a bit differently. I was like preparing a bunch of sketches, and then asking like the lead concept artist or the art director if he likes them, you know. And then when you actually getting more experience and you understand who are you working with, it's easier to just like maybe focus on one or two propositions and then present them but like more finalized. So like you know, like in general, like when it comes to, you know, like the first iterations, I would try to show something that like relatively like maybe not finished, but like looks quite detailed in a like, you know, first day. When somebody is actually, when the task is like heavily dependent on exploration, then I would focus on doing those exploration and you know, like present maybe the best 6 of those at the end of the day, but then they would be super rough and then all about the variety. Sometimes, you know, like preparing one project might actually actually take at least a week, because it's gonna be pretty complicated, and then I would need to do a lot of research. So it all depends on the project and how complicated the final result supposed to be.
All right. Hey, and I see other concept artists like Yama and Finian and also Kid Bash. They're all like developing new tools to increase the speed of the pipeline. But you're also mentioning that you can focus more on the designing part and less on the more technical aspects like shadow, light, etc., which I think is also part of the artistic process as well. But the pipeline is going quicker. What kind of technology are you following now? What do you think? Yama is like a kind of almost the messiahs of VR in concept art. Is that also something that you think is interesting or would be part of your way of working?
Actually, you know, like you mentioned like Kid Bash, and then that's something that's also like, that's why like ZBrush for me, it's like pretty cool, because you can, you know, like prepare one design, and then if it's accepted, then you have like prepare a bunch of other designs in similar matter, like, you know, a bunch of characters that's like like supposed to be one society. You can take the base of it and then just like, you know, change the shape of certain elements, or like use certain elements on different projects. And there are obviously like, you know, in bigger projects, like there are like a bunch of assets that are made by different artists, so you could also use them and change them. So, and it's cool not only because it actually allows you to create lots of like finalized proposition fast, but it also builds lots of continuity between the project, because like when you're actually using those elements, you can see that actually those characters, they are actually from the same world, which like when you drawing stuff and then you don't think about it, you might actually not even, you might try to make every single character unique, because that's, you know, like sounds cool from the concept art perspective, but then like those characters might ended up looking from the different worlds. But coming to your question, like I'm maybe not somebody that like gonna revolutionize the industry. I'm just trying to learn different tools and use ones that actually like are cool for me. So in last years, like, yeah, I picked up the like Blender because it's cool, because it allows you to do lots of things in one software. It has like a nice real-time renderer, Eevee, and also cycles. Maybe they're like, you know, when I'm supposed to like render just one character, I might use Keyshot, because like it's easy to pick up. But I'm using tools that, at least from my perspective, they're kind of like a standard tools for the like at least some of the professional concept artists. So,
hey, thank you. Let's watch to some personal work. I'm also really curious in some of. I have some questions on that as well, because in your personal work like this, it's beyond human. It's part of a challenge I saw. what are you focusing on when you do personal art? What is like what you try to get out of it?
Yeah, in personal, because with the older works, like in personal work, I was just trying to work on stuff that I have no opportunity to work on in my professional work. So like, you know, when I was like doing character work, I was in my personal time, I was trying to do some like illustrations that like maybe showing some like silly situation or stuff like that. With this, the topic of the challenge was actually set. So you also like, despite of like actually doing those like concepts, you actually had to came up with your own story, and that was actually a pretty big challenge for me. But at least for me, it was I wrote my first sketch of the story, and then I was not trying to be like strict about it. When I was working on the designs and some part of the stories were not fitting to what I was actually coming up with the characters, or I realized that like certain stuff could be done better, I was just trying to change the story, and I was working on the visual aspects of the characters and the story at the same time. So like it would make sense. In many cases, when you're actually working on the professional work, you don't have that option. Like you're getting the script and you're working on the design, and then sometimes when you have like some propositions that they might get into the story, but usually that's not the case. So like for me, like the biggest, like also like the biggest, second biggest challenge was how to actually design 10 characters in relatively like short period of time after work. So actually using ZBrush helped me a lot, and that's actually the example of something that I was talking about, where I used like the base body for some of those characters, and I just I figured out the base body, and then I added like different elements for the different characters. And then I could just, you know, work on the design separately from the light and the mood for the final pictures. So because when you're actually trying to make a picture which looks like have nice lighting, nice pose, nice design, that could be overwhelming. So in my opinion, if I would have like some advice to like making those things, it's also like breaking down your process to like the easiest steps that could be like easily managed for you, and then like bringing them together. So maybe if you're using only 2D, maybe try to figure out the character first and the design in like some simple pose, and then try to, you know, came up with the lighting and the pose for the character, and then do the final image, because this way might be very like more and like more simpler than it would be if you try to do all of those things at the same time.
Hey, and regarding your personal work, where do you find your inspiration? So, like, not if I'm not asking for different other concept artists or people from your team, but like also not maybe from out the field of games, etc. But what kind of music, films, fine arts, musea? What kind of stuff really inspires you while doing personal work?
You know, actually, the same thing. Like I'm interested in like many things, like in terms of like what I'm actually making. So the same thing actually applies to my interests. So I'm interested in fashion a bit. I'm interested in like in history. I'm not like maybe going into those topics a lot, but you know, like those topics might like help me with like coming up with those like ideas, because like in many cases most of the ideas that like you have, they are like coming from somewhere else. You either like mixing them from two things that you know, or like if you like coming up with something that you might think that it's very original, there is a huge chance that like somebody had like very similar idea in the past. But like another thing that actually I realized that like even if you have like some idea that was realized in the past, it's still good to at least try to make it, because your approach to that idea might be completely different, and you might end up with something that's also gonna be cool in different way. Because in the past I was doing that thing to myself a lot, where okay, I had an idea and then I saw that somebody actually did it before, and I was like, okay, I cannot do it now because that idea is not original enough. But or when I had an idea that I thought that it's like, you know, amazing, I was not using it in professional work because I was telling to myself, it's like too good to use it in professional work. I will use it for my personal work. And then at some point you realize that you have like more ideas that you could use in personal works, or at least you don't have that much time to work on those personal stuff. So you start to using those ideas, you know, like you store those ideas in your memory, like, or like you might write them down in somewhere, and then you use it for different projects. Sometimes, like many artists actually tend to use the same ideas that they like for like different projects, like same poses or stuff like that. For me, like the inspiration like might come from like different places. I'm a huge gamer. I watch movies. I like sci-fi. I like fantasy.
Yeah, because I think that's really important. Like if I'm watching your this kind of artwork, really has a good eye for fashion and also for makeup and etc. etc.
And
I think
also, yeah, it's like that was the exploration of like shapes, and like that's a funny thing. I did makeup workshops, and also I did like workshops of like sewing clothing.
yeah, but that's really important because you normally don't hear that much because people are like comparing their work on ArtStation or different kind of platforms on Instagram, and in that way they are copying sometimes a bit the style, or they are really big fan of a game. So you see a lot of fan art, but actually designing a world, designing a story that's a world to play in and to game in or to tell a story in, should be like also compiled and designed by elements like fashion, like fine art, so that it makes it fresh and like surprising and new and the next step. Because otherwise it's repeating something that is already done before. So that's why I think it's so nice that you're saying, okay, I'm doing makeup and I'm doing that kind of stuff, because that's what makes it appealing, your work, right? So your personal work and explorations and experiments will be paid back by doing it professional and bringing in fresh ideas, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's also like a good advice. Like being interested in like many things, you never know where it actually might be useful for your like projects, or like in what way it's gonna inspire you. And sometimes like even things that you might think that they're not related to concept art might be pretty important for your work at the end of the day. Like, you know, if you like studied industrial design, it's like a huge thing like for you because like then you can use that knowledge in actual concept art and make stuff that's actually believable and feels real.
All right. Thank you so much for this interview, Marek. It was really inspiring, and I'm really happy that after such a huge project as Cyberpunk, you still have the energy to share your knowledge and make time for us at Playgrounds. I'm really honored by this. And
no
like
problem.
Said,
thanks for having me.